Roger, go for deploy.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to Adventure Fit Radio. Today what we have for you is an interesting discussion with Veronica Sheen. So Dr. Veronica Sheen. So actually first I must say I'm recording this on my iPhone and my iPhone headset, so if it sounds different to our normal recording, our normal audio, then don't stress, it's just the intro and outro. Just had to do it on the fly today. So yes, this show's with Dr. Veronica Sheen. Dr. Veronica has done a lot of work in the field of employment and basically talking about, in recent times, she's been talking about AI and the future of employment. So how will artificial intelligence taking over our jobs affect us? Will we implement a universal basic income, which means, there's the same amount of money in the economy, but there's less jobs for people. So do we spread that wealth across the board? People have more time for leisure activities, passion projects, creative exploits. A lot of people think that's going to give people no drive and be a very negative aspect of life. I, for one, think it'll be great. I could easily work 1/3 of the amount that I work right now, and I'd be real happy. Anyway, it's a great conversation with Veronica. Today we are sponsored by Audible, so check out audibletrial.com/ADVF radio. You'll get one free audiobook and 30 days free there, guys. Audible is a fantastic service, over 200,000 audiobooks. Check it out. Also head to quashcreative.com. Quash Creative is run by Sean Marsh, the guy that did our intro of this podcast and a great friend of the show. Check out Quash Creative and use the code word radio to when you speak to the guys to get a free SEO report or a report on your existing brand. And we're also brought to you by Adventure Fit Travel, as always, guys. So Adventure Fit Travel, we have amazing trips coming up. Every month from now on, we've got Iceland coming up. We sold that out, released the second Iceland. We got New Zealand in the early new year. We have a little mini trip in Australia, 4-day weekend getaway. We've got Kokoda Track. We're releasing Hawaii, Bali, Greece. Lots of cool stuff coming up. Use the code word radio for 10% off. And here's the show. Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to Adventure Fit Radio.
Radio.
We are sitting here with Veronica Sheen.
Sheen.
Veronica
Can
is.
you guys hear an echo?
We're going to introduce Veronica. Let her explain herself shortly. Before we throw to her, though, as always, we're going to start off with Tommy serenading us with Tommy's tribute to Veronica.
Alrighty, welcome aboard, Veronica. I have decided to cover an Alice in Chains grunge song, so we'll see how we go. And I must warn you that I do get pretty into it, so here we go. Spilled the water there. Oh, this is going to be good. Ain't found a way to speak to Sheen. I hope she's single, 'cause I'm definitely keen. My brain does scream to me from somewhere. Ooh. Yeah, we get to talk employment. Oh, yeah. Yeah, here comes Veronica. Yeah, she ain't gonna die. It's just a part of the song. No, I'm keen to call her mine. Welcome aboard. There you go, my friend.
Wow. Oh, gee.
It's next level stuff.
So, Veronica, that's normally how we start the show. Sorry, I normally start off with how funny was that or an apology. Yeah. So today it'll be sorry about that.
Well, there's certain people in my network who will find it very amusing and interesting and entertaining.
Are you one of those?
They mainly live in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
All right. So no one in Australia's going to think you're funny, Tony.
No, I don't like that one.
I loved it. It was good. So, Veronica, hey, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your recent trip over to the OECD in Paris and kind of what you were discussing there?
Yeah, well, I've had a career in social research and I'm really interested in inequality. But that's actually, and I did I worked in public policy for many years and the focus had been on employment. Okay, so I eventually got around to doing a doctorate around, workforce casualisation, about how there's just so many, just not the sort of secure full-time jobs that, we sort of all dreamed that we'd have in the 70s, 80s, maybe into the 90s, but they've basically gone. But what actually came out of it, so I did this doctorate, but what was really interesting, it wasn't so much casualisation that was that's a big thing, but it's actually how work's been really transformed by technology, about work practices. And what had really got me interested in was the whole changing nature of work itself. And that affects whether you've got security or not security, but I think the debate's really different around that. It's really about how work is just becoming quite different because of the way technology is impacting on jobs, and that's a whole big thing. So a great thing was that I, for some reason, an invitation turned up in my inbox in, I don't know, was it March or April, to go to this conference at the OECD in June on, anyway, the subject is the Great Divide, and that included digitalisation, the changing nature of work, as one of the causes of, big economic social polarisation. So I was really interested, and amazingly, I just happened to be passing through Paris just at that.
That's unreal.
I know, it was unreal. It was just fantastic, and so I was able to go. I mean, you wouldn't bother going to a conference for 2 days, travelling all that way. I mean, some people would, but I wouldn't. But so it was a really great opportunity, and it was an amazing conference, so much to say about it. But really, the crux of it was around the future of work and what that means for public policy. The conference preceded a ministerial meeting at the OECD. And just to remind people, the OECD is the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is a central body for mainly developed countries. I think it has about 30 members. So all those members, including Australia, fund it. The biggest funder is the United States, which funds about 20%. I think Australia funds about 2%. It's great. It depends on how big your population is. So it's per capita funding. And it does a lot of policy work, comparative work. And also it provides leadership on public policy, and that was what the forum was about, to, really get governments thinking about what they need to do around digitalisation, changing nature of work, and what's coming with that is, what we know, this great big division in this growing divide. Those doing really well and those being left behind. So the conference was really trying to, get governments to think about. You just can't have this big polarisation because it's actually bad on growth. That's the big message, and so there was so the 2-day conference I went to was followed by a ministerial conference, and we had an Australian minister there, the Minister for Trade, Minister Stephen Chiobo. I'm not sure how to say his name, but anyway.
Jobo will do.
Yep,
whatever.
Mr. Steve Jobo.
Whatever.
I think it's a regional dialect.
So anyway, that was, it was a huge conference. There was so much discussion, but anyway, that was the guts of it. It was fantastically interesting,
So it's very interesting. I find it quite interesting, the way that technology has reshaped the way that obviously we do our work day to day.
We wouldn't be sitting here without it.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
right. All of my assistants, everything in the back end of AdventureFit is all in the Philippines. We all work remotely, which is quite interesting, like a concept that wouldn't have been really applied 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about, obviously, like the technology taking our jobs, obviously, is like one of the things that people are talking about a lot right now. But you're talking about, I heard you mention the way that technology is changing the way we work and changing the way that. So tell us about, like, what are some of the big topics on the change in the way that we work, rather than like getting all of our jobs taken, but like having to adapt and still hold on to employment.
Yeah, I think this is really it. So we're hearing a lot about every day we hear. I mean, it was on the ABC last night, the night before. I was watching some French news earlier, and showed how technology robots were actually picking cherries and strawberries. agricultural replacement of agricultural jobs. So it's really huge. I think, but what's really important to understand, it's not just about replacements, about how you do your job. So what's increasingly happens if you work in an office, now you might have to wear a device which monitors all your activities, all your actions over a course of a day, and they can just keep track of you. So that actually is changing how jobs are done. So there's a lot more infiltration into the actual job itself. And that's really important to understand, and it's making the productivity out of jobs much stricter and higher than it used to be. But we also need to consider that, okay, we have a lot of technologies, but all that has to be administered, made, repaired, looked after, and that itself is a huge area of employment. And as you say, increasingly there's this globalisation of work, so jobs that could be done, would be done locally can be outsourced and sent overseas. And then the other big area of change is around the platform or the gig economy. So people, Airtasker, and they have so many of them at Amazon. Amazon Turk, Mechanical Turk in the US is a big thing. So where people actually compete for tasks. And there's a name for that. It's called taskification. So jobs actually so we're not actually necessarily losing jobs, but they're being broken up into tasks and divided up in different sort of ways.
Yeah, like real C2C kind of stuff, consumer to consumer, like Airbnb and Uber and Airtasker. Like Ross, who I just introduced you to sitting on the couch out there, that he's staying with us over Airbnb.
Oh yeah.
So that's obviously, is that what you mean? Like more, everything's going to more of a person to person, like you don't.
Yeah, it's more. It's the breaking down of jobs, and it's sort of. So you might have thought about an office job in the past involving. Oh, and I'll just give it. I don't know, just doing. Different elements to it. But the thing is, those elements can actually be split up, and broken down into tasks. So I'll just give a simple example. So an office job might have required making coffee, doing the typing, photocopying, whatever. But now, you'd have a robot doing the coffee, someone in the Philippines doing the typing, and someone and some other mechanism for doing the photocopying. I mean, that's just, I'm just trying to get it really simple, but, just all the bits of what once might have been a 9-to-5 office job is now can just be broken out, outsourced. A lot of those jobs can be contracted out by a company which just does, for instance, particular aspects of office jobs. Yeah. But that can happens across so many areas of employment, and we shouldn't just think they're the lower end employment. Increasingly, they're talking about that having across fields like law, accounting, financial services, a big one now. It'd be more of an efficient kind of workflow? Would that be fair to say? Because have you ever read the book, the E-Myth Revisited? No.
It's about setting up small business and making it run super efficiently, and you can walk away from it basically. And they use McDonald's as a perfect example. So McDonald's changed the game when they came in, and they're like, all right, everybody was making a burger from start to finish. This one person was and they're like, we can do this way quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
This person butters the buns, pass it to this person who puts down the patty, blah, blah, blah. So everyone has their own individual task, which makes the whole process a lot more efficient. So that's probably a benefit. But then, how does it work with like so much of that? That
started earlier than that, didn't it? I reckon that started like in with the Industrial Revolution, where people just went
It's just got it's
McDonald's is a famous example, an easy famous example that everybody knows.
And it's just sort of got more. It's just intensified all that stuff. And I understand China. I mean, Donald Trump keeps talking about bringing the manufacturing jobs back to the United States. I wonder if those manufacturing workers from the 70s and 80s and 90s that lost their jobs want the jobs in factories in China. I don't think they will, because what I hear the Chinese factory workers say, they just do one little thing day in, day out, and that's the efficiency of Chinese factories.
Yeah.
I wonder if those. I wonder if they want them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get them. They're not going to. I mean, Trump can carry on all his life. They're not going to come back to the US, to any of those Rust Belt states like they were in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that that people talk about with the rise of technology as well, obviously, is the fact that technology is taking over our jobs. So this is the so me and Tommy outside looking in, the general punter who listens to all this AI talk that seems to be, all the rage at the moment. Well, it's going to continue the rage, because we are going towards, everything becoming intelligent, basically, and
self-sufficient.
So, and cognified. But so, what about? Was there much talk at the conference, or what are your thoughts on the fact that are we coming into a position where we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because obviously, like, soon we have automated cars. The Tesla Model X can drive around many state roads in California without a driver touching the wheel, and soon it's going to be like, for example, truck drivers. Truck drivers is the biggest industry in America, and that's soon to go to automated cars. So, because to everybody that outside looking in, like I say, like people that don't know as much about it, like myself and Tommy, it's like that's very, oh my God, what's everybody going to do? We're all going to lose our jobs. But then
Armageddon.
But is it? I mean, no one would have known the industries that have popped up due to the internet. So there's always new industries popping up. And when we have all this artificial intelligence, is it going to be that we're just hoping that we have these new roles to fill, or is it going to get to the point where it's like, okay, this could be a problem, and how are we going to address it? What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, I think it does need managing. I mean, there are people left behind, and in the UK and the USA, the big political problems there around the regional areas are just left behind. I mean, they just sort of haven't caught up. So big populations have lost industries, and nothing's gone to replace them. So governments do need to provide leadership around that, and that's why the OECD conference was important, because it actually pushes government to think about, investment in this sort of infrastructure to get up new industries, industries, and there are models around the world. I mean, Germany's really good at the public-private sector partnerships. That really has done very well. I mean, it does have the enormous advantages of its it gets all the advantages of the euro, but it is really good at working with government, working with business to move things along. Now, a really interesting model that was brought up at the conference was in Denmark. They've established what's called a disruption council, including government, business, unions. In Denmark, this disruption council, so it's bringing together all these players, government, business, unions, NGOs, might be others too, to really work on how, given that there is such transformation in employment, how you can actually make it work for everybody. What needs to happen in education? How do we get young people up to what they need to do for the new jobs? How do we get the older workers, skilled up to take them on? That sort of thing. And I think that's the sort of responses. I mean, you can work on it. And the Danish Prime Minister was there at the conference, and he's really pro leadership on moving forward. And he reminded us about what was called after the Second World War, where Europe was in a mess, and the United States with Europe came up with the Marshall Plan, which was to basically just kickstart spending in Europe to get it going again. And what happened? It just flourished. So those sort of things are the way of the future, but it's just not going to happen without leadership.
Yeah.
And that's where governments,
of course,
and those sort of big big thinking groups.
People that can make decisions and implement on a grand scale. You think one of the things that, so obviously since the printing press, people have been, it's been a very positive impact in your life to be able to read and write.
Sure.
Obviously that's where we're at, and that's where we're at for hundreds of years. And now we're getting to the point where if we're getting to, say, 20 years in the future, and everything is cognified, everything that we touch is responds to us, everything. Even now, like a lot of stuff in schools, it's not written down; it's on a computer. So,
or it's spoken to us.
Yeah. But do you think the equivalent of? I remember when I was in grade 2 or whatever, and you strive to get your pen license. You learn how to read and write. It's very important. Do you think that in the future, or now, it's starting to become that coding is the reading and writing of the future of employment?
I've definitely heard that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Programming's becoming a necessary skill in the next 10
reading
years.
and writing,
Exactly.
You can't code.
Having some understanding of how to use these things.
Well, to be honest, I don't really know. I guess so. I mean,
Well,
I guess so. I don't really know. I mean, I suppose I just sort of, I don't know. I just think you need another mindset around what's work, what you need to do for work. I mean, I think this idea that you sort of go through school and uni and get a particular skill set, like be an accountant or a lawyer or something. I just wonder whether that applies anymore. You need to be more well-rounded at different levels for the world of work, the future. I mean, certainly you do need the technological skills, but I think also the critical thinking skills, the skills to think innovatively about your future rather than, the narrow career tracks really important.
Well, nothing's really set in stone anymore, is it? The fact is, if things go the way that they're looking at going, there's probably going to be a rise in a million different new technologies and industries that we never will foresee. So
exactly.
You have to be able to improve the entrepreneurial aspect of kids and the creativity, like you say. Because they're the ones that are going to be literally creating our future, because at the moment it's probably going to be quite up in the air. I think it's a really interesting time that we're actually living in, because I genuinely think that if you go from I think the most interesting time in the history of that we know of, because you think of where we are now, like my grandparents or great-grandparents, I knew my great-grandparents. My great-grandparents were probably around for basically when flight was invented, manned flight. And by the time
Man flight.
by the time I'm a great-grandparent, my kids are probably going to be doing holidays to Mars. You know what I mean? Like, that's how much the world is changing.
Sure.
Because there's an exponential increase in the rate of expanding technology. It's not going like Morse code, TV,
No.
It's now going, that's building on top of itself.
Yeah.
It's compounding, which I think is fascinating. But in terms of the university and all that stuff, and kids being the next generation, all this sort of stuff, do you think that's that whole idea of having children, making sure their education is all good and all this sort of stuff, and getting the job and keep the economy going, that whole idea is becoming more or less obsolete, I feel, but just because what I just said of technology almost becoming self-sufficient, will all those sorts of jobs go, and there'll be less of a need for our children to be equipped with a skill set that we may have?
Well, I suppose we don't really know. I mean, I guess that's a possibility. But look, I mean, I suppose I'm just really in for a well-rounded education at lots of levels, and I'm really big on second languages and.
Tu parles français?
Parler français, oui. C'est très
un poco de español or no?
No. But
he just said what his name was.
Yeah, okay.
My name's Spanish.
Yeah. My name's do you speak Spanish?
Yeah, so just things like that. I think more, and I guess getting the globalization thing really working in schools.
Yes.
I just think that's more important than anything in particular specific.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess that's as much as I can offer, because I don't think anybody knows. I don't know, but I do know that that interaction, and look at all of us. We're all got that connection out there, and I think that's just how all the young people in my life, they're just amazingly well travelled. They're just so interconnected. Well, that really is the future, isn't it? And we're all we're living it too.
I feel like that globalization is just going to change the game. I mean, we have it quite amazingly now with Facebook and social media and Skype to a lesser extent. But imagine what Skype is going to be like in the education system in the next 20 years, where kids will literally be able to see holograms of other kids in India, and talk to them and interact with them. And I mean, things like excursions.
Everything will be VR.
It will literally change the game. It will be fascinating. I mean, these kids are going to grow up with the potential for knowledge far greater than what we could ever hope for, because we just didn't have the technology for it.
Sure.
It's fascinating stuff.
So was there much talk of at this conference or in what you do with the future of employment? Is there? And I'm just talking about the most topical things and the things that are things that I hear about. Are there much talks about like what do we actually do if we get to the point where artificial intelligence becomes our level and then self-replicating? So it means it takes away all of human ingenuity, basically. Like because we create everything that's in the world right now, like with the help of technology, but it basically comes from us. And it's going to get to the point. Well, some pundits say it's going to get to the point where robots are going to be self-replicating, and then at that point, then we pretty much retire from creating anything. Yeah. Like, is there genuine in the places that you're in? Is there genuine discussion at these kind of summits and stuff, that conferences that are revolving around that thought in particular?
I think it's more about the winners and losers from the process. Really, that's it. I don't think anybody's saying that all work will be all jobs will be obliterated, and there's going to be large sections. I mean, actually, the biggest growth areas in the Australian economy are human services, which are not easily. They say that you can get robots to do aged care work and what have you. But that's not really the case. Yeah. So a lot of the growth is actually in human service work, so healthcare, social assistance, education, that sort of thing. But it's really the discussions are more about the winners and losers. And there was a really good French TV series last year on SBS called Chapalium, and that sort of brought that out. So it really showed how that all could unfold with 20% who've done okay and the 80% who've really lost out. And really that's the biggest risk around this, rather than the obliteration of all jobs. And I guess the allocation of jobs to the lower strata, and then the few elites. So that's more that was really a focus of the OECD discussion around the winners and losers from technology and how you get the better distribution.
So when you say winners and losers, just so to try and get my head around it, are we talking about like basically the rich getting a lot richer and the poor getting a lot poorer?
Yeah, well, I suppose because the other side of technology, it is about extracting more. Companies apply technology to extract more profit.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's
it's business.
Yeah, it's business. And getting rid of labour and cutting back costs and from workers and all the risks associated with human beings, it just saves a lot of money. So it's really how all that's managed. And I had to give the OECD great credit. They invited one of the great writer in this field who's really a leader. His name's Professor Guy Standing, and his latest books have been called The Corruption of Capitalism, and he's a big advocate for basic universal income. Yeah. But he was actually invited to the conference, put out all his stuff. So what he's saying is that really the way capitalism is playing out at the moment is in ways that are very damaging to the common good. Yep. And he's put up a very tough set of public policies to overcome that, and that includes taxation, to really getting down to that corporate the way that large corporations are just sort of avoiding taxation around the world, and but there was a lot of quite technical elements to his proposals as well. But, how good was that somebody as radical as that could be put up at a conference of the, of the peak body for the, developed countries, wow. So it was great to see him in person. So great hero of mine. So, yeah.
I just wanted to take it a little bit more personal. How did you find yourself with an interest in this? We spoke about it specifically, but what sort of got you involved in this sort of stuff from an early age, or was it,
I don't know, just really interesting. Look, I had worked in NGOs. I'd been a policy officer in various organisations that always had a focus on employment. And then eventually I just wanted to go back and get more into it. So I went back, say, about 10 years ago and did a doctorate on workforce casualisation. But as I said, it wasn't so much about casualisation, it was about how jobs are being transformed, and that was the real outcome of it. And that's sort of what I've been writing about and trying to get a book published about it at the moment. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to the point of like the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, do you think there's going to be a big divide in nations, basically? Because say all the Western economies, say all the Western economies are able to adapt all the practices that Silicon Valley invents in the next 20 years, but is that going to trickle down to the poorer economies of the world, or is it going to be even more of a divide with the Western culture and some of the...
Well, they're saying that, look, I guess one of the big, things that is coming out, that, look, there has been a reduction of poverty and the growing middle classes in China and India and a lot of those countries. It's just that there's a lot of people left behind in that process too. So I guess the division sort of is looked at more as within countries rather than between countries, and about how the spoils, say for India, are going to quite limited elite. While there is a growing middle class, there's still a lot of people left behind. So I think the discussion's more along those lines rather than that the West getting richer and richer. Because clearly, in the United States, there's desperate poverty and unemployment and, people really out of it there. So, living in third world conditions,
Yeah. Veronica, so I also want to touch on, we mentioned it briefly earlier in the show already, but I want to touch on basically universal basic income, which is because there's all these... like everything with AI, I get right into the artificial intelligence. I don't pretend to be very knowledgeable about it, but I like to listen to and read books about it. And with artificial intelligence in general, there's two schools of thought. There's Sam Harris's doomsday school of thought. Stephen Hawking applies that rhetoric as well. Then there's that most people and most of the interesting articles and TED Talks, that's all, that sells kind of newspapers, is basically the scaremongering stuff. Neil deGrasse Tyson's the only guy that I listen to that's very, very positive about the future.
And Kevin Kelly as well.
Kevin Kelly's quite positive. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's an astrophysicist. He's anyway, so he's of the opinion that everything that we have that we want to get rid of in famine and disease and so forth will be eradicated by the fact that artificial intelligence is going to be smart enough to come up with it. So there's that, and then there's the other thing, but the other thing is universal basic income, and that has the two polarizing schools of thought as well. So one of them is, as soon as we lose our jobs, we're going to have no direction, we're going to have no drive, we're going to have no purpose in life. And then there's the other school of thought, which I'm probably lean much more towards, which is give me 8 more hours in the day, and I'll find some amazing passions. Like the agricultural revolution is where we really kicked off our artistic gene in what we do as humans
and
now.
Efficiency as well,
because we had time to focus on these things. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, do you think the idea of universal basic income first works, kind of how it works, and then do you think that when we do have all this more free time, you think it's going to be positive or a negative?
Yeah, look, I've read a lot about UBI, and I really get it. And Guy Standing's actually a very he does a lot of advocacy for it, because he says that really where we're going is we've just got to have some sort of, people just got to get some sort of basic decent income, and and then then we work from there around technology. I guess, look, I have some concerns about UBI, and I believe the OECD has put out a report, which I haven't read. My concerns is that it could actually intensify polarisation. So it means that some people will be very dependent on it and some people just get it and then it'll go back into taxation. It won't mean anything. I'm just really concerned about how it plays out in terms of equality, and I'm not really convinced by those arguments. Those arguments that, we'll just get a more equal society by giving everybody this basic income, and then what happens is that if they earn more, then it goes back, gets returned.
Communism, kind of.
Return to taxation. Look, I actually think what we do need is more distribution of work and employment. That's my feeling about it, and what I want to write some more about is, there's a lot of people, they're complaining about they're too much work, they're overworked. Well, what about sharing it out a bit more? And I think that's the bigger argument to be had rather than sharing out of opportunity. The other thing I'm really concerned about UBI is that it could actually, stagnate certain groups in the community, and I really worry about what happens to kids' opportunities and so on. So, okay, so everybody's on a UBI, so where do we go with that? And I just think, I don't know, my gut feeling about it is, well, I do understand all the arguments about it, is that let's get more serious about distribution of employment rather than distribution of income. And I just don't trust governments with it. I don't say if there's a recession, so what do we do? Cut back on it, or I don't know. I just think it's risk. I just think it's fraught with risk.
It's the first time I've heard anyone mention what you just mentioned, the idea that you're. So if I'm hearing you correctly, right? So say we have. Because my understanding of the future is if everything becomes automated, everything's artificial intelligence, all our jobs are taken. So there's going to be the same amount of money in the economy, but it's just there's going to be 60% of the jobs. So so there's a lot more money to be spread. So are you saying because there's only there's having 40 hours a week and having no work.
Yeah.
There's also, I think what you're saying is a really nice middle ground in the middle where I'm earning a good wage and I earn 2,000 Australian dollars a week.
Yeah.
That's all right, whatever. So $2,000 a week, I'm working 40 hours, maybe 50 hours, like you say. Are you saying that, okay, how about we work 15 to 20 hours a week for $2,000 a week? The money's going to be, there's going to be more money in the economy and you just have less. You still go to work. There's still people that are employed that have something to strive for. And there's more money, so you just...
But you've just got more time as well.
Is that what you're kind of saying?
That's it.
That's definitely a positive. Definitely a positive.
Well, I just really worry about it. Look, I have come from a social welfare background, and I can just see, I just can't see how the UBI is going to get rid of that, what in some communities called generational disadvantage, for instance. I just think it's got that real risk of taking people down. And look, I understand all that stuff about creativity, and that UBI could get people going with, really interesting projects. I mean, down the western suburbs where I live, God, what I want to come back to is do a lot of tree planting and stuff like that. If people are on UBIs, let's all go out and do tree planting. But I actually think there needs to be, what also needs to happen is that more government funding for tree planting and employment of people. That's what I think. We also need to recognise, and something I've written quite a bit about is, look, we have been in Australia and many other countries, we have been in austerity mode. So there's this real focus on, getting government balanced budgets and so forth. But you actually need government spending in infrastructure, in environmental regeneration. And that actually grows the economy. So,
of course.
thinking ahead. And I'd actually, my preference would be investment spending. I really go with Trump on that. If he does it, God, the United States, from what I saw, really needs it. Infrastructure spending. To me, that would be the better way than UBI. I don't know. It just really bothers. Just aspects of it that bothers me.
There's people that will definitely take it. not take advantage of the system, because if everybody was on the system, then everybody's on the system. But there's people that would probably sit on the couch, do nothing, eat Cheetos all day.
Of course.
You know, like there's always going to be those people, and there's probably going to be more of those people. And then the people that are creative, that have a creative vein, are probably going to be more creative and are going to be able to bring that out. But so there's probably still going to be those two types of people that we have right now. Yeah, it's just about
but it
whether
could,
it's a
from the sounds of things,
negative.
It could become more or less black and white as opposed to having a big middle ground.
Yeah.
Based off that. Be interesting. Yeah. Well, where do you think all that's going to start to... Well, it's bubbling now.
Well, it's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, I guess it's going to take years down the track. But look, the important thing about that conference is the OECD is pushing it with governments, with leaders, and putting it on the ground. I mean, getting them to think about what's happening and getting some of those models out there, like Denmark with their disruption council and their policies of infrastructure spending and getting the economy going through that. I mean that's what we need. So, look, it is slow process, and we have government with a certain mindset at the moment, but things change over time, and getting conversations going, I think that's really the starting point.
Yes. Yes.
So if we're to sum up the future of employment with the rise of artificial intelligence, do you think it's something that's
He's
going to
definitely pushing the artificial intelligence one here. I like it.
Well, I mean, that's what we're talking about, I suppose.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, of course.
But would you say what side of the fence do you sit on if you were to give I'm very worried, I think it'll be fine, we'll figure it out, or I'm not worried at all, it's going to be fine? Like, if you could sum up...
Do you see Terminator?
Yeah. Do you see Skynet?
Do I see what?
Have you seen the movie Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger? You know how the rise of artificial intelligence, and then it ends up being a war.
Basically, it's a futurized documentary of what we're about to go through.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Documentary.
Well, so is Matrix, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If you want to chuck that in, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Harry Potter, obviously.
Look, I think we don't know, but I think we drive it. I mean, that's it. You drive it and you push for public policies, and I just don't think there's going to be this great replacement. Yeah, my feeling the replacement thing's is overplayed. And what I'm saying is, and what I'm writing about, and I said at the talk of Melbourne Knowledge Week, is that the replacement aspects is getting too much airplay. It's actually the reconstruction of jobs and employment through technology that I think is at least as big a part of the story. It's how you do the jobs, it's the breaking down of jobs, and I reckon that is actually really important, big part of it. And that has really the big implications for the winners and losers, and what policies you need to ensure that there's good spread of outcomes across the community. And getting back to the fact that if you want economic growth, well, equality, reasonable level of equality and social and economic mobility is how you get growth.
Absolutely.
Economic growth. Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's just not forget, behind all this, we've got the climate change thing, which is just so critical, and somehow or another there needs to be a winding in of all this discussion about global warming, and I don't know how all that works, but that's just so.
Well, all right, Veronica. Well, we do have 6 from 6 to go through, so should we start it off, Tommy?
I think we should, my friend.
It's our 4th interview for the day, so I'm starting to break down in my
My name's actually John.
Okay.
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So, Veronica, my first 2 questions are travel related.
Oh yeah.
First one is, what is your favourite travel destination on the planet? Favourite place you've been that you just really highly recommend to anyone, and why?
Wow, that's a really big, heavy question. I highly recommend it. Oh,
and there's a right or wrong here.
Oh, gee, that's really, really heavy. I actually think, really, really uncomfortable about that question.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I've never been told it's an uncomfortable question.
I actually think around the Great Ocean Road is just the most really splendid place, and
Absolutely.
And I actually really feel very strongly about Australia as a really important country in its own right because of the land, and I just feel really. But I've travelled quite a lot in Europe over recent years, and I really get it with it, but I'm sort of a bit over it in a way, and I actually really love Australia. I think also Great Ocean Road beaches, but I absolutely love East Gippsland and the temperate rainforest down there and the beaches and the I mean wilderness to me is just really a really tremendously important value, and to me it trumps all the all the cathedrals and the magnificent
man-made
buildings
crap.
of everywhere. To me, it's just really, really elemental. And there's the best book I read over the last few months. Just got it was Tim Winton's book called Island Home.
All right.
I really recommend it. It's
good, Tim Winton.
Yeah,
He's
I really
good.
recommend it. It's about Australia and about Australia, the land of Australia, and it talks about that. It just got it completely about what it's different about Europe, why it's different from Europe. So yeah, I'm very so land, that attachment to land here, and it's just really, really important. So East Gippsland,
absolutely.
Tasmania.
Great Ocean Road.
Great Ocean Road. Yeah, wow. I don't know whether that's the
Couple of
answer.
places there, Veronica.
That's good.
Okay.
You've given us a plethora of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second question of mine is
Yeah.
dream travel destination, somewhere that you haven't been that's at the very top of your bucket list.
Well, a friend of mine posted some really great photos of Iceland recently on Facebook, and I thought, wow, that'd be interesting.
Wasn't me, was it?
No, not on my Facebook.
We're going to Iceland with Adventure Fit with my company in November. It's our
Wow.
next trip we have coming up. So
Wow.
yeah,
Damn.
it's
Brilliant.
you should come along.
Hashtag jump aboard.
Iceland just looked amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be great. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
My last question is a book recommendation. So, considering you've already mentioned Tim Winton's, let's go with another one. Is there any other books that you like to recommend to people? Can be any sort of book you think will give a positive impact.
Guy Standings, Professor Guy Standings, any of his books, The Corruption of Capitalism, his books on the precariat. I think there's a new one on basic income. But anything by Professor Guy Standings, I just think he's just a really great thinker and
Cool.
really interesting.
Awesome. Tommy.
Veronica, what do you like to do in your spare time or when you have some downtime?
Well, as I said, I do think second languages. When I was at high school a lot of decades ago, French was the only language taught in schools, and I've just sort of kept it up over the years. So I do a meet-up group with French, and just kept it going. It's very useful. But I do think second
Parce que
languages
pour
are
moi, j'ai appris le français à l'école depuis 7 ans.
Oh, oui.
Oui,
Okay.
oui.
Superb.
Ah,
Yeah.
merci.
Such a bonny day, really. I just think, look, French is what I inherited through schooling, but I just think second languages are really, really fantastic. French is a good one because it
yo
is.
también.
It is. It's
You're not
French,
in this,
yeah, French or Spanish. I think French and Spanish are really great because they're so global and really good. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I study on Thursday mornings with my Spanish teacher in
Right.
Guatemala on Skype.
Yeah, fantastic.
7:30 every morning.
Yeah,
every
brilliant.
Thursday morning.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah.
How's it going for you, mate?
No muy bien.
It's going okay, bien.
That's all right.
It's going all right,
bien,
man.
está bien.
Yeah. Veronica, what about someone you look up to? Like, who's a role model in your life? If you have any.
Well, recently,
Event Fit Radio.
okay. Well, recently in the Netherlands, I visited a scholar who's in his 80s, and I just really admired him because he just kept up his name was Peter Waterman, and
Peter Watermelon.
Peter Waterman.
sorry.
Is he brother of David Apple?
No, Peter
Chris
Waterman. Anyway, look, I just thought he'd just kept up the five for all his years, and I was born. He'd just been such a I just really admired him.
Yeah.
He was in labour studies, how he just kept it up. He'd sort of worked in The Hague in the Institute of Social Studies for many years, and then he'd just kept on writing and putting out stuff, and been very fiery over the years on labour issues, and that's who I admire. He's not well known, but he actually passed away, and there was an obituary in The Guardian recently about him. Yeah.
Okay, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And my final question is, now this is a tough one, so I'll give you a bit of time for it. If you could invite 3 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be and why? And you can't invite Chris Carrot.
Who's who?
Bill mentioned a bloke before that's just, he's a bit of a nuisance, so. Chris Carrot.
Wow. Not really good on those sort of.
We knew some thinking music.
Yeah, who you admire most? I mean, there's people I read and. Yeah.
Chris Carrot.
Oh, gee.
So, as examples, we've had Muhammad Ali today. We've had Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler's our most famous guest.
Yeah.
Actually, not joking. He's our most popular guest we've ever had. People want to pick Adolf Hitler's brain.
We don't
interview Nazis. It's
Jesus. We've had Michael Jordan, people like that. Al Gore has been one.
Wow.
Chris Carrot.
Well, I've already mentioned, people that I really read, people I think provide leadership around, some of these issues like guy standing and...
so lovely.
And...
Tommy can't get over the Chris
Peter
Carrot.
Waterman, and I'm trying to think of a third one, preferably female, and I'm just really struggling.
Tyra Banks.
Yeah, who?
Oh, she's just a really famous supermodel. I'm just trying to. I'm
just really struggling. I'm just not really great on.
They're tough. It is tough.
So,
what about this one?
Scarlett
Johansson.
People who just look. The people I admire most, people who really keep fighting for things, and really put themselves out there and really push the barrel on getting on social change. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
Who are out there, and those are the people that I really admire. Really, fight for change.
Sorry, Veronica.
Yeah,
Tommy, we sometimes we know you're trying to be so.
You said a joke before, and I thought it was the funniest thing. And when you can't get all your laughter out.
Yeah.
I just absolutely lost it there. It was hilarious.
Sorry, Veronica.
I'm all good now.
So who have we got at the dinner table at the moment? We've got 2 definites.
Professor Guy Standing, Peter Waterman, Peter Waterman. And I'm just trying to think of someone else who'd really push out. There's somebody I just...
Scarlett Johansson was the Black Widow.
Oh, gee. Thomas Piketty. No, have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay, Thomas Piketty is a French economist. He wrote this... He's written the most extraordinary book about... called Capital, and it's basically supposed to be. Well, I do reckon.
It's actually happened to us twice in the history of this show, and it's just killed it. Sorry about that.
You need to hear about Piketty.
Yeah, give it to us.
Right,
Give us
Piketty is such an important figure. They say that he's actually as important now as Karl Marx was in the 1850s and 60s.
Right.
Basically, but don't get confused about the relationship. It's his analysis of contemporary capitalism, which is so extraordinary, and he's just written, over the last few years, he's just written this amazing book called Capital, which sort of tells you why there's such a growth of inequality why the levels of it and what the problems are. And he's just such an extraordinary figure in contemporary economics. He was actually here late last year at the Melbourne Town Hall, and I went to see him, and I actually had an article published about him. Oh, for Christ's sake. I'm going.
I can't do it.
Veronica, so
Piketty.
Chris Piketty, yeah.
Piketty.
All right, so we've got our dinner guests.
Yeah.
That's
They're all economists. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We're sorry for
what would you,
saying stupid gags.
Yeah,
not
it's
being able to
ridiculous.
control ourselves.
I think it's a mixture of not sleeping. What would you have at dinner? What would be your go-to?
Yeah, probably. My cooking skills are limited. Probably a roast lamb and 3 veg. You know.
I like it.
Yeah.
Just 3 vegetables for each person?
Yeah, 3 roast lamb with roast vegetables. That probably would be it.
Bit of salt.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Alrighty. Finally, Veronica, where can people find you? Anything you want to plug?
veronicasheen.net. I have a website. It's very clearly laid out. There's a lot of articles there. I was also writing a lot for the academic news outlet, The Conversation, from 2012, 13, 14. There's a lot of articles there, and I keep everything up to date on my website, veronicasheen.net.
Sure.
Pretty simple.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Great.
Cool.
Great.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, Veronica.
Pleasure. Okay.
And that's a wrap.
Alrighty, guys. If you're a first-time listener and you love the show, please subscribe. If you're a many-time listener, thank you so much. And if you could go ahead and leave us a rating and review, that would help. Everything that we get in way of subscriptions, guys, everything we get in the way of rating and reviews help us climb the iTunes ladder and help us keep this show viable into the future. Also, if there's anything that you need from the show notes, any links to anything that we mentioned, that'll be found at www.adventuretravel.com/radio. Check out audibletrial.com/ADVF radio, quashcreative.com, and use radio when you speak to the guys. And go to www.adventuretravel.com, use the code word radio, and you'll get 10% off any and all trips. See you next week.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.